Okay, so good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Europark webinar. Today we will be looking at sustainable tourism. And although borders are closed and people are not traveling much during these days, well, sustainable tourism is still at the heart of the management of many protected areas in Europe. And that's why Europark joined the CEETO project, an Interreg project, and today we will be hearing the outcomes of this project. So we have a big panel of presenters, and they will give us, well, first an overview of the CEETO project and the main outcomes of the project, but also we will hear some very practical case studies that were implemented during the project duration. Without taking any longer, let me just say my name is Barbara Pais. I work for the Europark Federation, and we are the pan-European organization of protected areas. And what we try to do with our webinar series is to bring people together and to exchange experience. So I will be aiming that in the end of this session, you will have a lot of questions, and we want you to participate in the discussion, okay? So just grab a paper and pen, and while you have, when you have any questions, just write down your questions and save them for the end. In the end, you will be able to participate in the discussion by raising your hand. And when I mean raising your hand, is not necessarily as I'm doing here, but it's on the participants list. Please see in the bottom of the Zoom window, you have a participants list. Well, you can obviously see who is there and even send them a private message if you want. But what I want you to see in the participants list is a little icon where you can see raise hand, okay? Can we try a show of raise hands digitally? So I know that you are all up to do it. Exactly. So Martin, Anna, okay, I've seen a lot of raised hands. Perfect. Okay, so those who have raised the hand, you can unraise the hand. Okay, and this is the way you will be participating in the discussion, because I mean, we are almost 180 people, so we need some order, okay? Without taking any longer, now I will give the floor to Mauro. Mauro is the project manager, is working as a project manager of CEETO, and is talking from Italy. Mauro will give us a very brief introduction of the CEETO, just to frame us in what the project objectives were, and then we'll start hearing the best practices. Mauro, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning to everybody. My name is Mauro Generali, in charge of the Emilia-Romagna region, Department of Protected Area, Forestry and Mountain Development. And as such, we are lead partner in the CEETO project that I'm going to briefly introduce. Thanks to the organizer, Europark, in name of Barbara and Fernando. Thanks to all the speakers that will animate this webinar. And thanks to everyone connected for their participation. Well, in this very brief presentation, we want to frame the CEETO project and its goals, listing the main project output of the 4 technical work packages and the related targets, and to conclude, an introduction on the origin of the guidelines and manual. CEETO. CEETO is the acronym for Central Europe Ecotourism, but we actually worked on the broader concept of sustainable tourism. How we did that? By developing what's reported in the subtitle, tools for nature protection. The project involves these 11 partners, here's the list, coming from these 6 countries, those with the flag that you see in the map, while in the dark color is represented the whole Interreg Central Europe area. The project started in June 2017, and now after 3 years, we are approaching to the end. The CEETO project objective is to protect and enhance the natural heritage of protected areas and Natura 2000 network by promoting an innovative sustainable tourism governance model based on a participatory planning approach. At the same time, with this approach, it's possible to reduce usage conflicts, sustain social and territorial cohesion, improve the quality of life of local communities, and encourage the tourism industry to get not a threat, but a driver for nature conservation. Here we can see the target groups of the project results. This pyramid width represent the number of corresponding figures, and descending from the tops of the few policymakers goes down through the protected areas management bodies and passing through the tourism stakeholders of public and private sectors, reaches the single tourists. The CEETO project aims to identify tools and policies for approaching sustainability which can be used at different levels, like the level of the policymakers at local, regional, and national level, which are addressed the guidelines, and the level of the protected area management bodies, which are addressed the manual that we'll see later on. But even if not so broadly as the other deliverable, they can be useful also for a further lower level, that of the local stakeholders who were actively involved in participatory processes, up to single tourists, which were addressed awareness campaign of various kinds. So here in brief, you can see the main project outputs: inventory of planning, management, and monitoring tools, handbook of successful innovative practices in Europe. These both were described in the first webinar that you can view in the link that my colleague is placing in the chat on your right. The participatory processes with the local stakeholder that opened the second project phase gave life to 8 sustainable tourism action plans with a 5-year perspective. And from these action plans were extracted 8 pilot actions developed to implement and test the effectiveness of the sustainable tourism governance models and tools. So the gathered experience brought to the last outputs: the guidelines addressed to the policymaker and the manual for a protected area manager. And to conclude, we produced the permanent CEETO network with the aim to spread the CEETO results and foster the exchange and cooperation of sustainable tourism well beyond the end of project duration. So as stated before, the testing phase saw the implementation of 8 pilot actions. We have no time to enter in the detail right now, but in a few minutes you will see 2 important examples. Here we just say that despite the differences in location, landscape, and socio-political organization, the developed analysis showed that different protected areas were characterized by common problems, which is possible to summarize in these tables. These are the criticalities connected with the management models, namely limited knowledge of visitors' profile, not a prepared tourist offer, limited knowledge of the impacts produced by tourism, and low participation of the stakeholder in the definition of proposal for the sustainable development on tourism. In the same way, we can identify a group of criticalities connected with the tourist, or better, with the tourism fruition, that are limited knowledge of the peculiarities and fragilities of the protected areas, limited awareness of the behavior to be adopted, prevailing access to the key areas by private cars, limited knowledge of alternatives and possible offers within the protected areas, and concentration of tourist flow in space and time. These experiences, along with the other coming from literature and previous research, have given shape to the guidelines and the manual that Tina and Dana are going to present today. But how are these experiences distributed between the 2 outputs? We can say that in a protected area managing body, we generally have by one side the president and the executive board that are the local policy maker. They are in charge to work on the most strategic aspect, to design plans and programs, allocate budgets, and so on. To this group of people are addressed the guidelines, even though the guidelines are also addressed to policymakers of higher level, regional and national. By the other side, on the right, we have the director and the related staff. They are primarily responsible for tactics aspects, and so for the management, project drafting, activities implementation, and so on. The manual is addressed to this other group of subjects, okay? So my time is gone, and so I thank you for your attention. I leave you with the main links of the project and some pictures from CEETO Parks, and I'm handing over the word to Barbara. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mauro. Okay, so we are all set. We'll be hearing during this webinar about many of the tools that I will be mentioning, that Mauro just mentioned, the guidelines, the manual, and later on we'll be sending you the recordings, the presentation of Mauro, and all the links that you need. But for now, we'll hear Robert from Slovenia. Robert is a... Yes, hello, Robert.
Hello.
So Robert is the director of the Landscape Park Strunian, and he's a lawyer by profession. And with this background, he was able to create or to expand the activities of CEETO project to the buffer zone of the protected area. So quite often we hear that protected areas, we need to work within the protected area, but actually the buffer zones are very important. And Robert will show us how they did it and what are the outcomes. Robert, please share your screen with us.
Hello, there we go. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So good morning, everybody. I'm the director of the Landscape Park of Strunian, as you heard, and I'm about to share with you my views on the importance of buffer zones, based on the experience we gained in the framework of the CEETO project, and with an outlook at how the collaboration with public authorities and privates should be led. So the main topic I will focus on is the question of the development of a common strategy to foster the sustainable tourism involving public authorities and privates, and how buffer zones serve as a tool to mitigate the impact of tourism on protected areas. First, a couple of words about our park. It has been established in the 1990s by the municipalities of Izola and Piran, based on the Natural and Cultural Heritage Act, for the purpose of protection of natural values and the conservation of biodiversity and landscape diversity. Although the park is relatively small, it covers only 428 hectares. The Nature Park Strunian is a unique preserved piece of nature. There are 2 nature reserves, 1 natural monument, and 13 natural values in the park, and the whole area of the park is of ecological importance, Natura 2000 areas. The park is located, as you can see, in the Northern Adriatic Sea on the Slovenian coast, within the Gulf of Trieste, and is managed by the public institute Landscape Park Strunian, which has been established by the Slovenian government in 2009. There are some main characteristics that define our park: the salt pans, where the salt is being produced in the same traditional way for over 700 years. We have the only Slovenian marine lagoon, the highest fish cliff on the eastern Adriatic coast, the largest marine protected area in Slovenia, with the longest stretch of intact coast in the entire Gulf of Trieste, and a quite unique typical cultural landscape. There are less than 500 inhabitants in the park, and yet we estimate that over 400,000 tourists come to visit it every year, and the number is rising. Furthermore, the flow of visitors is concentrated just in a few months during the summer, from June to September. We can define this situation as what we today generally call as over-tourism. The impact of this massive tourist flow on such a delicate environment is huge, often devastating. Conflict situations between visitors and inhabitants are very often too. One of the main issues is the extremely increased traffic, as you can see on land, but on the sea as well. It is obvious that the management of the park have to seek solutions focused on a more sustainable form of tourism, seeking the delicate balance between nature protection on the one hand and financial interests of various economic enterprises and the expectations and needs of local inhabitants on the other hand. Thus, it is necessary to find an effective management model which must include local public authorities, the private sector, and the park management. One of the possible solutions is the creation of 1 or more buffer zones on the outskirts or the entry points of the park. And this is an approach we have, in my opinion, quite successfully tested in the framework of the CEETO project. We identified several approaches that could be combined with the concept of the buffer zones. The idea was to create an entry point to the park, to keep the traffic out of the park limits as much as possible, to offer the visitors an alternative means of transport, and thus reducing the pressure on the most vulnerable parts of the park. These activities needed to be developed with a high degree of involvement of various stakeholders, since they include important financial inputs, changes for spatial regulatory plans, serious limits on the mobility of the visitors, and consequently on the accessibility to hotels, restaurants, etc. While approaching local authorities, we had to present them a concrete analysis of the situation, including the negative influences mass tourism have not only on the park, but also to local inhabitants. We stressed that mass tourism is having a very poor financial outcome on the budget of the municipalities, since we are mainly dealing with one-day visitors who, at least most part of it, spend little less than a couple of euros per day for the parking fee. On the other hand, they put an important pressure on many public services and deteriorate the standard of living of local inhabitants. In other words, we pointed out that the economic and political downsides of mass tourism are. It is very important to have a direct communication with decision makers, to have a clear vision of what the proposed approach to the problem, be equipped with relevant data, and to make them understand that we, as managers of the park, are providing the local authority with solutions not only to ours, but also to their problems. We were well informed about the budget structure of the local communities, managed to get some amendments to it by majors and members of the municipality councils, involved the stakeholders in all the workshops, and provide them with necessary publicity of the activities. We led also an intensive communication with both municipalities, local communities, providers of public services, and others in order to get a wide support to our initiative. And it is therefore necessary to have an inclusive approach to local authorities. A letter or a single email can hardly result in a positive outcome. Do not underestimate the importance of personal relationship. It may sound as a paradox, but we, as a body established to protect nature, must deal a considerable portion of our time with people. Never forget that. So what were the implemented activities? As mentioned before, the activities were focused on the creation of 2 buffer zones, as you can see on the map, at the 2 main entry points of the park. One is called Belvedere terraces, and the other is Strumia. The idea was to keep the traffic out of the park limits as much as possible, and to offer visitors information about the protected area and alternative means of transport, and thus reducing the pressure on the most vulnerable parts of the park. Together with various stakeholders, we prepared 2 analyses on how stationary traffic should be managed on the before mentioned entry points of the park. The goal was to keep the vehicles out of the park and creating a buffer zone where visitors' flow can be managed efficiently. The analysis will hopefully be included in the spatial regulatory documents of both municipalities. Furthermore, the Belvedere terraces can be a transition zone between the urbanized tourist area of Isola and the park. There is a danger of possible degradation of this area by the construction of large-scale hotel capacity, especially on the cliff area. You can see here in the middle picture an example. This hotel was built, I think, in the mid-70s, not far away from our park, and it was also used the cliff as a position where to position the park. And you can see it on your right-hand side on the picture where it's written buffer zone underneath. It's also this cliff that could be potentially used for building hotel capacities. So we provided the municipality with an alternative conceptual solution by planning this in this zone a glamping and the upper part hidden apartments set in terraces. You can see in the right-hand side picture. The project documentation will hopefully be a valuable input for the municipality to do the changes in the relevant Spatial Plan Act. Within the regulation, the goal is to establish, as mentioned before, an entry point to the protected area where visitors can be informed about the park. Visitors' movement can be supervised, and they can be offered with several sustainable activities outside the park, and thus relieve some of the pressure on the PEA, especially in the summertime. As far as Strunjan, the second entry point, is concerned, in the Strunjan area, apart from the traffic analysis, which also identified possible solutions for the formation of a buffer zone, we tested the introduction of alternative transport of visitors from the buffer zone to some of the most common spots in the park. Together with the municipality of Piran, who provided 50% of the budget, local tourist operators and CEETO foundings, who introduced a free electric minibus shuttle route. And the bus operated through the summer of 2019 with great response from everybody. Visitors were able, while enjoying the trip, to listen to an audio recording about the park, get some brochures, receiving information about various events in the park, etc. Due to the success of the initiative, the necessary financial means have already been secured by the municipality and local tourist operators in order to maintain this practice even in the 2020. Where local businesses were involved too. They gave us an important input about their problems with mass tourism, their vision of how they would tackle it, and they actively collaborated in the process of collecting ideas regarding the formation of the buffer zone. They also co-founded some activities in the framework of the CEETO project. You can see here on the right-hand side of the slide, this is the leaflet we delivered through the hotels and in various places in the park, and you can see underneath all the logos of the stakeholders that collaborated financially, but also from the organization point of view to this project. From the process, a common conclusion emerged. The private sector is very interested in the management of tourist flow, since they all promote their businesses in reference to the park. You can see an example here on the screen which says active holiday within the Strunjan Landscape Park and so on. Therefore, they have a direct financial interest in keeping the park appealing to their customers, and an overcrowded park is definitely not an asset. They prefer to position themselves on the market as a high added value resort rather than targeting low budget mass tourism. All, and I really want to stress this, all tourist operators willingly took part in the elaboration of the buffer zone strategy, also by financially support the introduction of the electric minibus shuttle. And they too, as the municipality, already expressed their intention to co-finance any similar activities in the future. As for the municipalities, local businesses should always keep involved in the management of the park. They are a very valuable source of information, ideas, initiatives, and they can actively contribute to mitigate the impact of tourism in the protected area. They have an important role in the process of making the visitors aware of the protection regimes in the park. And again, personal relationships are of paramount importance. So, what have we learned? Any form of sustainable tourism, as you well know, should include nature protection, economic and social aspects. Buffer zones can effectively mitigate the negative effects of mass tourism on PAs. Managers of the protected areas on one side and local authorities and businesses on the other have many common issues and their interests. When approaching to different stakeholders, position yourself as their problem solver rather than troublemaker, and never underestimate the importance of personal relationships. That's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Robert. We have seen in many Europark webinars so far that indeed community engagement is one of the main fundamental parts of any protected areas. And Robert just highlighted that again. So the importance of personal relationship, but also on sitting at the same level with the stakeholders in a protected area and showing them, well, we are not here to create problems. We are here to find joint solutions. So Thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you.
I'm sure people will have questions. I hope you do. So start writing them down on your notebook. And the idea of connecting a buffer zone, it indeed can help you spread out your tourists, but at the same time also creating opportunities to other operators that are not inside the protected area itself, but can benefit also. So thank you very much, Robert. And from a very community and person perspective, we'll go totally different. We'll go to artificial intelligence and how data can help us successfully monitoring our most precious resources. So I invite Rudy now to share his screen. Rudy is the co-founder of Vision E in Italy, and he will tell us about the NEMOS system. Rudy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello to everyone. My name is Rudy Melli. I am CEO of Vision E from Italy, the company that created this AI service. And Chiara Rognoni, the reference of CEETO project in Emilia Centrale Parks Authority, has kindly asked me to illustrate this action pilot. Emilia Centrale Authority joined the Interreg CEETO project with the aim of testing a model of governance of tourist flow within protected areas in order to reduce environmental impacts and improve the socio-economic benefit that can result from a sustainable tourism approach. Salse di Nirano is a nature reserve in the municipality of Fiorano in the province of Modena and was selected as pilot action. It protects the largest and most peculiar complex of salse in Emilia-Romagna region. The salse are muddy volcanic formations that emit mud mixed with hydrocarbons. In this area, the main objective concern the conservation and protection of the reserve, with the particular reference to the integral protection zone, with the in-depth analysis of the local situation. So, how many people attend it, in what period, if there are some preferred observation point, or outside pets made by the hikers. If there are intrusions, where, when, and where is the entering way for that intrusions. The video content analysis service can document both the frequentation and the main threatening factors of the Salse di Nirano Nature Reserve. Another important objective is spreading an approach to sustainable tourism connected with the already varied and well-structured offer of educational activities for school, family, and association. An open day organized the 1st of September in collaboration with the municipality of Fiorano Modenese and local association was dedicated to raising awareness of the territory and the hikers on the specific environmental and landscape. The objectives of the monitoring and the usefulness of the VCA system was explained, and a guided tour on the field of the Salse and the visitor center was an occasion to communicating of the appropriate rules of conduct during the visit. The monitoring tool used was called NEMOS. NEMOS is an acronym for Nature Reserve Monitoring System. It acquires data every day from 30 minutes before sunrise to 30 minutes after sunset. Every second, the machine is automatically analyzed to identify, distinguish, and count person, animal, bike, motorcycle, and so on, using a camera positioned in the area and analyzing this camera with state-of-the-art algorithms of artificial intelligence that can detect the transits of vehicles and people along the access road to area, including any episodes of overcoming physical barriers, invasion of zone A by both peoples and animals, resulting from incorrect use. This kind of data can improve the knowledge of managing authorities about the tourist presence and behavior, with the purpose of planning sustainable activities to steer the behavior of visitors that access the whole area. This will contribute to preserving its unique and fragile landscape. The resources and steps needed to implement this pilot action were many. The first one was the collaboration with stakeholders. Initially, the system was planned to be installed in another place, Lake Partignano, in the High Modenese Apennine Regional Park. But this was not possible for a reason of ownership. Instead, the joint work with the willingness of the municipality of Fiorano Modenese as owner and manager of the Ca' Rossa Visitor Center made it possible to implement the project in a very short time. The creation of dissemination events such as the Open Day was important too. The second thing is the design, the monitoring process. What to monitor, where is possible to place the camera. This is not an aspect to not consider. Then it's important to take into account that an adequate observation period is necessary to have a valid statistical basis. So we need to implement the service for some month or year was the best one to take enough data. Then the installation of the system. We place 3 cameras in this is the area where we monitor. This is the place where position the camera, and here under the overlay there are 3 volcanoes. That is the spot that we are monitoring, and we are monitoring too the streets access the area. After the camera, there is another processing unit that is placed inside the Ca' Rossa Visitor Center. It is this one. And here we have electricity, but the system is designed to be powered by photovoltaic panels too. Another step important is the communication of the presence of this kind of system to the community attending the area. Then the most important was the data analysis to define an improvement plan with to make a decision with the data collected, and it's also important to allocate a budget for maintenance and implementation of educational activity with this kind of data collected. Now I have a short video about the system. The system is able to create in real time heat maps that show the position of the person and the or vehicle or animal presence in the area. This can be particularly useful to highlight, for example, the stopping points favored by visitors, where it could be strategic to place information sign or show preferential routes to be enhanced. Another things was the providing of qualitatively and quantitatively information about the intrusion in the integral protection zone. In this kind of image, you can see, for example, there is a lot of intrusion in this area. Some of that are done just only for to take a picture. So, for example, this system can be useful to think a new path, for example, a new observation point for the tourists that want to take a picture more close to the area. In the picture that you can see here, for example, this is the heat map only of the intrusion. You can see also the point where the people that cross the fence enter. So another example of using the data, you can place in that kind of spots some sign, some more dissuasive sign, or increase the fence, for example. another data collected is the time lapse of the area. The system collects picture every 5 minutes, and you can use it as a time machine. In this picture, you can find the same spot of one volcano and the same hour of the day, but with 46.5 day of difference. So you can see some slight but important difference, for example, in this place or another place. And this can be analyzed by, can be studied by geomorphological and floristic changes by the research institute. I will show you also another short contribution. This is the time lapse of the volcano. Here you can see some kind of data collected in the period of observation. The system is continuing now to collect data. Here you can see, for example, the counting of the people from camera 1. The peak that you can see in the graph is related to Monday and to Sunday and Saturday. So you can see there is an increase during the weekend. So this data can be used to set up visit route and or observation points, allow visitors to behave more consciously and responsibly. In addition, the data can assist in preparation of target initiative by complementing the annual programming. Conclusion, this pilot action of CEETO project was part of the process of applying for the European Charter for Sustainable Tourism and proved to be strategic both from the point of view of tourism and enhancement of the territory. The municipality and the stakeholders of the area have been key partners in the implementation of the project, highlight the importance in collaborating and working in a network and how to consolidate it, developing for a common strategy. NEMOS project is proving to be useful for the development of our sustainable tourism based on an in-depth analysis of the local situation and being able to connect and relate the data processed for other ongoing projects with research institute. The sharing of the same objectives, conservation of habitat, protected area, and sustainable tourism can make possible to experiment with new trends and approaches that, as in this case, bring results beyond expectation and can be adapted and replicated over time and in other areas. Thanks for attention.
Thank you very much, Rudy. It was very interesting. There are many protected areas in Europe that have monitoring system in place, but this one gives us this special feature of being able to understand where people are intruding, and that's really interesting data that protected areas can use to better manage their pets, to better manage access to their most special features. So thank you very much for sharing, Rudy.
Thank you.
Again, your questions, note them down. It's only 10 minutes more and we will open our discussion. But before we go to the final discussion, where we can look at these examples and maybe discuss more about your experience with sustainable tourism in your protected areas, well, this has been a 3 years project, and a lot of activities have been implemented in 8 pilot sites. So we have had a very difficult time on deciding which would be the best practices that we will show you today. But I'm sure that you would like to learn more about the project, and for that, there are 2 tools that were created specifically, one of them specifically for protected area managers. It's called the guidelines. And there is also a manual. And in the next couple of minutes, we'll have the presentation of these 2 tools that were created to capitalize the knowledge gathered in the CEETO project. So I invite now Anna from WWF Adria, also one of the partners of CEETO. Anna is an expert in project manager, and she has a lot of experience in cooperating with public and private sector. And she will tell us everything about the manual for protected area managers. So she will show us how is it built. Anna.
Thank you, Barbara. Nice introduction. Just let me share my screen. Okay. I hope you see my presentation.
Yes. Okay.
So as Barbara said, thank you for the introduction. My name is Anna Karavric from WWF Adria. I work as a partner, WWF Adria is a partner within the CEETO project. And as it was said, we had a 3 years project and a lot of experience was gathered. So we prepared a tool, especially for the protected area managers. So I will here present the CEETO manual on sustainable tourism governance for protected area managers. Actually, it is a tool to support protected area and also Natura 2000 managers and practitioners to realize development and management of sustainable tourism in their areas. It can also be used by local stakeholders to get a general overview of the sustainable tourism governance in protected areas. So, as you all know, tourism in natural destination is increasing at a fast rate, and the faster and the more intense tourism development occurs in a natural area, the more it changes it. So in order to manage the complexities of the protected areas and also to increase the quality of protected area governance, managers and other practitioners need a wide range of skills and expertise. And therefore, to suit their needs, this manual is intended like a cookbook. We like to call it like a cookbook. This manual gives basic information on main steps of sustainable tourism development and management processes in protected areas. It also provides practical examples based on case studies from around Europe, including CEETO case studies, and recommends literature for deepening the knowledge. So the manual is conceptualized in a few chapters. On the right-hand side of the slide, you can see these main chapters. So first we start as an introduction with the guiding principles and international framework for sustainable tourism in protected areas. And here we mentioned Convention on Biological Diversity, International Union for Conservation of Nature, European Commission's guidelines, and European Charter for Sustainable Tourism in Protected Areas. Following this is the elaboration of the development and management processes of sustainable tourism in PAs, including various topics. You can see them on the right-hand side of this slide. So these are tourism and visitation management, very important stakeholder engagement, as you already noticed in the examples presented before, communication, education, and interpretation, and also one important thing, socioeconomic benefits for local communities. Also, we elaborated more on competencies and capacity building of PA staff, certification and quality labels, and also visitor safety and climate change. As a concluding chapters, there are overview of CEETO pilot cases, which present how 8 protected areas included in the CEETO project implemented the tourism governance model in their areas. And also we conclude with a list of useful literature for further reading. It is important to say that the preparation of the manual was based on relevant documents produced by IUCN, UNWTO, so European Charter for Sustainable Tourism in Protected Areas, just to name a few, and also on previously developed CEETO documents and experience of the CEETO pilot case studies. It is important also to say that the manual will have around 40 pages, and these are a lot of topics that it is covered by it. So it is very important to say that it will be a digital version with interactive links, so everybody can link on the specific, let's say, a resource or a web page and can be fast moved to there. I have one thing also to present here within my presentation, and it is another deliverable of the CEETO project. It is CEETO network and its online platform. So CEETO network was founded by CEETO project partners from 6 Central European countries, and current members are international, national, regional, and local level bodies that take part in nature conservation and management of protected areas. And actually the network is open to new members. To share the knowledge and experience, the network developed CEETO online platform. And actually the platform, the aim of the platform is to ensure the wide transfer of CEETO results, also to enable discussion, to exchange and transfer of knowledge and ideas, and to facilitate development of common ideas. Registration to this platform is free of charge, and on the platform is also a guide how to use and navigate the platform. So registering to the platforms offers public and private discussions. So everybody who registered to the platform can share their experience or ideas or some kind of news, and other members can also pose a question or a comment on this post. Also, platform offers a wide documents repository. You can also find here all of the documents delivered within the CEETO projects, and various other resources like publication and also relevant web pages. Also, we presented here a quick access to glossary of very important terms in relation to sustainable tourism in protected areas, and actually we hope that all of this will help the members of the platform to jointly share their knowledge and ideas. For this time, this would be all from my side. Thank you for your attention, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you very much, Anna. Okay, so I hope that you have already written down the CEETO platform, and I hope you can all join the CEETO network, because a network is made by people who contribute, and I'm sure you have a lot of expertise that you can also add to the network. Okay, so from a manual for protected area managers, and thank you very much, Anna, for giving us the structure of the manual. I'm sure there will be a lot of interesting information for all of you. But quite often, the protected areas themselves, they do the best they can, but there is also the policymakers that sometimes are very far away in terms of thinking and in terms of the main objectives of the protected areas themselves. So how can we better convince or work together with policymakers is something that Tina will share with us. So Tina works for a regional development authority in Slovenia. And she will show us, she has a lot of experience in building this mutual connection between policy development and policy implementation. So she will tell us how the guidelines are structured and what we can learn from them. Tina, the floor is yours.
Okay. Hello everyone. Thank you, Barbara. So I will share my presentation. Okay, as Barbara said, I'm Tina Primožić from Regional Development Center Koper, and I will give you a short presentation of the guidelines for developing sustainable tourism in protected areas for policymakers. So structure of my presentation will be done by answering these 4 questions. So what are the CEETO guidelines? What is the aim of CEETO guidelines? Who can use it and where you can download it? So let's now start with the first question. What are CEETO guidelines? CEETO guidelines are a document made by our external expert, Marko Kuščak, from Studio MKA. Marko is also here with us and will be available for some specific questions regarding the guidelines. Then our colleagues from Hungarian organization Infea and me from Regional Development Center Koper. Part of the guidelines were also made by contributions from all other partners from CEETO project. So, CEETO guidelines are the synthesis of the work done during the CEETO project and consist of the handbook, the summary of the handbook on successful and innovative practices for sustainable tourism inside protected areas, from synthesis of the pilot action results and evaluations, and reports of the internal and independent evaluation of pilot action. In general, we could say that the guidelines are divided in three main parts, where first part covers the general background about sustainable tourism and its principles and approaches. Here you can find theoretical platform of sustainable tourism, why are important stakeholders, and which for internationally accepted policy guides should be observed by policymakers and sustainable tourism managers. And at the end are described steps needed to prepare strategy and action plans. The second part consists of planning, monitoring, and management tools. On the picture, you can see a mix of well-consolidated methods which have been used by many years, and some of them are quite innovative. And these tools can be considered as a starting point, and these were also a starting point for our protected areas to prepare their action plans. And these tools can be further enhanced and developed by introducing other techniques or transformed the existing ones. Then are here descriptions of 8 case studies of 8 pilot actions. So which monitoring tools they choose, activities, and what they achieved. This chapter is then finished with the 2 summaries of evaluation of pilot actions, one internal, done by protected areas on the basis of structured interviews and questionnaires, which were implemented among their stakeholders, and the second evaluation made by external expert. And here you can see some photos from our pilot areas. And the final part 3, are recommendations. These recommendations are based on comprehensive assessments of pilot actions and provide information about what policymakers and other stakeholders could do in planning sustainable tourism in protected areas. So I'm going to my next questions. What is the aim of the CEETO guidelines? So the link between protected areas and tourism is old as the history of protected areas, but their relationship is complex and sometimes adversarial. Tourism is always a critical component to consider in the establishment and management of protected areas. And effective management is essential to ensure that the nature is being conserved in the park and in the surroundings or in the buffer zones. So management activities must include planning, monitoring, and also cooperation with local people and with other stakeholders to balance nature protection with their needs and aspirations. And closely linked with the poor management are threats from widespread and either poorly managed or illegal human activities occurring within protected areas. These include breaking the park rules, poaching of protected animals, parking problems, and such activities are a threat leading to pollution, climate change, the introduction of invasive species, and of course degradation of such vulnerable environment such as protected areas. So these guidelines aimed to build an understanding of protected area tourism and its management. They provide both a theoretical structure and practical guidelines. The underlying aim is to ensure that tourism contributes to the purposes of protected area and does not undermine them. In this context, in the short, we could say that the guidelines are designed to fill a need in providing planning approach and a tool for integrated and sustainable development of tourism. So who can use the guidelines? As I mentioned before, CEETO guidelines will serve as a tool designed to support policymakers at international, national, and regional level to increase their capacity in developing sustainable tourism policies. And guidelines are also could also be used by park managers and other conservation practitioners to ensure that tourism in protected area is appropriate, well managed, and support conservation objectives. So, where you can download it, guidelines will be available, as mentioned before, at the CEETO network, and they will be available in 6 different languages. So here I will stop. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you very much, Tina. Okay, so very soon both the manual and the guidelines will be available. A final invitation before we go to our discussion is the CEETO final conference. So it was planned to have a final conference in Austria, but obviously we are not able to travel. So the conference will now be online, and this will be a very interesting program where you'll be able to hear other examples coming out of the CEETO project. And this will be exactly in 1 week time. It will be on the 14th of May. And I think my colleagues will just paste now in the chat box the link where you can find more information. Of course, it's online, it's free, and you can join in from the comfort of your home. So do take a look and join in the conference. All right. And thank you to all our presenters today. We will now open the discussion. Again, let's try to avoid using the chat, and you can start raising your hand digitally. If you don't know where it is, it's in the bottom in the participants list. You can find a little icon to raise your hand. But I will start straight away. I've been collecting some of your questions, and there is an interesting question I would like to start with. Maybe for Robert, I don't know, but let's see what you say. Does high-value tourism in protected landscapes result in protected landscapes becoming only places for the rich? How can we make sure that those who are not able to afford to visit can also get this opportunity? So, who wants to comment?
Is this question directed to me or in general?
I think it was directed to you because it came right after your presentation.
Okay.
So,
well, I definitely don't think that sustainable tourism is per se an activity that is meant just for wealthy people. It's just a matter of conscience and behavior and how tourist flow is managed and organized within the protected area. So I don't really see it as a financial burden, but rather a management effort.
Thank you very much, Robert. Okay, we have a very straight to the point question to Rudy. Rudy, how much would a system implementation like NEMOS cost? I'm sure you'll say it depends on what we are monitoring, but maybe you can give us an idea.
No, yes, depends. It starts from 2,000 euro, but depends how many camera, where you place it. If you use your own camera, so we need to investigate it. Also you should also take a budget for the maintenance of the system, and there is not an answer. So could be, if you need, for example, just one place, could be an acceptable and cost. But if you need, for example, to monitoring a great park where you need to use a lot of camera, the cost increase
Obviously,
a lot.
yes.
Yeah.
But there was a very interesting point on the system that you mentioned, that they are powered by solar energy, so that actually makes it possible to virtually have it everywhere, even in the most remote places. Okay, well, anyway, Rudy will be available if you want to contact him for further information, for sure, right, Rudy?
Exactly.
Yes, okay. Okay, Robert, I'll go back to you. We have another question from Yelena, and she mentioned that when you stop traffic within the protected area, did you encounter any kind of visitor problems, or were they unhappy with this solution? And how did you solve the problem with the parking lot for visitors?
Okay, so first of all, we didn't stop the traffic. It was mainly the production of two different analyses of how the traffic management should be led within the protected area. What we did, we showed by our pilot action that alternative means of transport can relieve the pressure on the most delicate part of the parks. So by introducing this shuttle bus, we actually provided a mean to reach these parts to all of them who could not simply park the car, because our problem is that the parking lot is already full, like at 9 o'clock in the morning, which is a problem already because it's too big, too wide, but also for all the others which come later, and just turning around the park, and that they park everywhere in nature and so on. We offer them the possibility to use a public transport and then use this minibus. So maybe I wasn't clear enough in my presentation. It was more the elaboration of possible solutions rather than the concrete application.
Robert, I have a question related to this, not with inland traffic, but with marine traffic. Can you give us some examples on how you can manage marine traffic? Because that's a big problem in all the Mediterranean coast.
Well, first of all, a part of the marine protected area is it's a no-take zone. I mean, no activity zone. On the other hand, the only possible way is to make stricter regimes in the marine protected area, meaning that we seek solutions together with local municipalities to just limit the number of vessels in the marine protected area, or to keep them on the outskirts of the marine protected area, or at least to prevent the anchoring, because this is the hugest problem, of course. And we had some bad experiences last year by organizing big boat parties on the outskirts, on the limits of the protected area. And of course, they affect the protected area, although they were organized on the border, outside really of the protected area. So it's more a matter of, it's a legal matter rather than a practical. We cannot manage it by just, I don't know, go on the sea and try to persuade people to leave.
Okay, yeah, but then you'll need also some enforcement, even if it's a law, exactly.
We have our staff and our boat, and of course we work quite closely with the police and so on. So, but if it's not forbidden to put an anchor in the marine protected area, it's a very attractive spot. So it's normal that it's sometimes so crowded that it was in the photo I showed you before.
Thank you very much, Robert. Okay, so now let's go to Ulf. Ulf has raised his hand digitally. Ulf, can you present yourself and turn on your microphone, maybe your camera as well, if you're not connected?
Yes, hello. My name is Ulf Zimmermann. I'm talking from the National Park of Lower Oder Valley in Germany. I have a question more or less to Rudy. It's more, or even to all of you, does anyone have experience with a tool which is called WishTrip? This is an enterprise. I had somehow got into connection, and they offer more or less the possibilities which you described by Nemos. They use the smartphones, and they have on the one hand do marketing with that, and on the other hand you have all these information where the people move for right on time on the territory. You can do analysis. And I was very wondering if this will work. So my question would be, does any one of you have already experience with this enterprise, for example?
I don't know exactly that kind of system, but I know that the technology that is used also for the big square for people. But there is a significant difference between the two systems. In the first one, the privacy is not granted because you need to have the private ID of each phone in order to have a correct count.
Exactly.
The video analysis system instead does not store data about the single visitors. For example, if the image is stored for a time lapse or for the intrusion, the appearance of the person that is detected is obscured with blur. So the big significant difference is this one. And another big difference is that the video analysis system can detect also vehicles and animals and can distinguish between categories. For example, the first application was in a remote region, the Pratignano Lake that I told before, where the main monitoring was about animals, horses or Slavic pigs. And in that case, you can store data about which kind of animal visited this kind of area and where is it stops or their route.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your question, Ulf, and for your answer, Rudy. There is another question in that direction in the chat box. Although I ask you to please raise your hand, I would prefer that you make your questions directly than me reading. It's much more boring. So the question for Rudy is your system counting visitors also considering other data about biodiversity? So for example, nidification sites. And I think this depends on the planning, right? On where you implement it.
Yeah, I don't understand too much the question because the system can distinguish between the categories of animals and can count person. So where you place the system collects data.
Exactly, and it depends on the protected area management authority where you would be able to place that.
For sure. Instead, the first place we think where to install the system was not done because there is ownership problems that should be not resolved.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, and as we are in the monitoring, I will just accept also this question in the chat, although again, please use the microphone. But it's about drones. Shall we use drones for monitoring or exactly georeference drones to monitor the park? Do you know anything about any example, Rudy, or maybe any other of our presenters?
This could be an idea, but there is a big problem about the time of monitoring because a drone have a time life for the power supply about 30 minutes, maybe 1 hour with the professional models, but it cannot be a constant and continuously monitoring of the area. So it's not so easy. Maybe you can, for a moment, you can put on the area and check if in that moment what there is, but when you come back to the office with the drone, you have lost your real-time data.
Well, in a previous webinar, Carlos was the person making the question. We heard an example of how they use drones, but for mapping on a more detailed geomorphological, to get more detailed geomorphological information about the site that can be used, for example, to show funders of protected areas the impact of the reforestation actions, for example, or the impact of some kind of anthropomorphic action. So
Yes.
yes, there are examples in the conservation world, and I can also add those to the links that we'll share you after the webinar.
Mm-hmm. Yes, in that case, it's very useful.
Yes, and Veronica is also mentioning that indeed drones can also have an impact on wildlife. So maybe, as there are not many questions in the group, let me ask to the full audience, does anyone has any experience using drone monitoring that would like to share with us, like very briefly? Let's see. Maybe Marta. Marta, you put the hand to share an experience or to make a question?
Hi, no, just to make a question.
Okay, okay.
So it's just a question to all of you, really. What are the next steps for the project? So the project is finishing, and now you said you created the platform, the CEETO network.eu. But are you going to do any other activities? Anything that will carry on the activities of the project?
Mauro, maybe you want to answer this one, or Anna? Mauro, you're mute. Yeah. No, you are still mute. Let me activate.
No,
yes.
I say that I was writing to Carlos the reply to the WAV question on the drone question. So I didn't properly listen to this question.
So Marta just asked what are the next steps of the project. So we have the CEETO network. There will be in 1 week the final conference, but she basically wants to know what's going to be the next steps. Maybe you or someone else from the project partners can answer?
Well, actually, the project stops here. After the final conference, we'll have the last meeting for spreading the CEETO results. But to keep alive what we did in these years, we'll have the CEETO network platform, the CEETO network itself, so the member can still grow in time, in space. And so we hope that the activities we did in this year will be also the base for future activities, for joint initiatives with other people, and to make the base for a new project. So that's it. I think almost as almost all the project is the best solution is finding a way to preserve the initiatives in the time.
And not only that, some of the pilot areas involved, they apply the methodology of the Charter, the European Charter for Sustainable Tourism in Protected Areas. And this is a process that requires a commitment to sustainability in the long term. So these parks will certainly be awarded soon, and they will keep this commitment for the years to come. So indeed, what I feel that those EU-funded projects can do, it's really start the seeds or seedling, and then the results should be harvested by the authorities itself. And I hope this will happen. And nonetheless, we have still all the resources that they have produced, the manual and the guidelines that will be available. But now we go to Romania, and we have a question from Timea. Timea, would you like to turn on your microphone and camera and share with us your question?
Yes, sure. Hi, everyone. Congratulations for the project. It's really amazing. My question is, have you maybe thought about a way to shift the existing tourist businesses into a more sustainable direction, or maybe a way for encouraging new startups in ecotourism? And if yes, how do you support them, or what are the conclusions?
Robert, Tina, maybe one of you that are more connected to businesses. Robert, I see you smiling.
I'll try to answer. Yeah, well, the way we try to encourage the hotels, really, it was by involving them in the management of the park. Because as I stressed in my presentation, I think that we have common interests and common problems, and that over-tourism is not so appealing to them as I won't call it high-class tourism, but more sustainable, organized, managed tourism. So one way would be, of course, the European Charter of Sustainable Tourism. and we are setting the fundaments for this initiative in the future. But otherwise, I think the most effective way is really talking to the managers of the hotels, of the public institutions, of the municipalities. It's really, I can feel it as a personal relationship the management or the manager has to have with the decision makers. It's not a matter just of sending emails or making phone calls, or it's really being, I won't call it friends, but almost with all the relevant stakeholders in the park area. And you have to find a way of how to approach them in a proper way. Not, as I stated, not being the one, and Barbara, you stressed it too, not by making troubles to them, but rather than offer them solutions which are appealing to them too, because their point of view is of course different than ours. It's more the profit that they have to gain out of it somehow at the end of the day. I don't know if I answered your question, Timea.
I was curious, maybe if you thought about a collaboration with environmental consultancies or something to help the companies, because what I realize is that sometimes the people it's not that they don't want to shift into the sustainable direction, but they don't have the knowledge actually.
Let me just give an example from Livre de la Forêt. This is a park in France. They are also within the European Charter for Sustainable Tourism. So they are part of our network of sustainable destinations. And what they were doing exactly to empower their partners, the tourism operators that were working within the park, they were creating a lot of workshops and opportunities to tell them how they can save costs, for example, on environmental costs, let's say energy consumption, water consumption. And they were actually providing them a toolkit, a physical toolkit to each one of the partners that we were working with, so that they could really reduce their consumption and thus somehow increase their profit by reducing their costs. Well, this is just one of the cases on how protected areas can take the lead on empowering people, showing them, well, there are alternatives, but also making it very easy for people to understand they can give, for example, a direct contribution to protected areas and to nature conservation. So from Spain, there are many examples on how businesses are really giving a direct contribution to conservation, either by volunteering activities or by creating programs where they put their visitors helping the protected area. So there are many ways that a business can contribute, but this has to be a multi-level game, let's call it. There has to be some influence from decision makers who can enable and create opportunities, economical opportunities that benefit those who look for more sustainable solutions. But there also needs to be a more local level, exactly as Robert was saying, on enabling this dialogue, on showing people, well, there is a different way apart from the mass tourism that produces a lot of garbage and a lot of ecological footprint. So action needs to be done at both levels. Okay. Thank you, Timea, for your question.
Thank you.
We go now to Luca. Luca, would you like to make your question?
Yes. Hello, everybody. I'm trying also to open the video. It is a contribution to the question, what can be the follow-up of CEETO? I was working in Federal Party, so I contributed to the drafting of the project, but I'm coming from another similar experience called Mediterranean experience of ecotourism, where we did, and we are still doing in other projects like Destimed, we are working on the same topic: planning, monitoring, and management of sustainable tourism within the parks. Let's say our difference in this moment is that we also set up an association called Meet Network in order not only for two goals, let's say, one, to increase the capacities of the park in managing and developing ecotourism products. And the second point, the second goal of the association is to sell these products. So this is my proposal to the CEETO network that was, let's say, I see the basis, the same basis than our network. Not to be just a place of exchange of ideas, of know-how, etc., but also to try to not only to develop a culture of good management of tourism within protected areas, but also in developing examples, pilot examples of ideal tourism in our parks, what we call ecotourism. That it is not just nature-based tourism, but it is something wider. Okay, I don't spoil the time in explaining our definition, let's say, of ecotourism, but I can that most of you can understand, can share what I refer to. So and this could be a potential cooperation with us, with me, between your network is covering Central Europe, let's say, beside Italy and Croatia, and our network is covering Mediterranean. So this could be one potential field of cooperation for the next future.
There you go, Mauro. Some work to do. Thank you, Luca, for your input. Okay, before we go to the COVID discussion that I'm following on the chat, I would like to give the hand to Servi. The hand was raised. Maybe you can connect your camera and your microphone.
Oh, yeah. Right. I'm
okay.
muted. I'm looking for oh yeah, right. Okay, video is there as well. It seems to work now. Okay. Yes. Question is, we are working with a project in the Caucasus also on developing ecotourism in protected areas. We had at that time Richard Denman, who helped us to set up a guideline for sustainable tourism in the protected areas, and we are applying it. And I wonder, question is to Anna about the handbook, because our people are working with it. It's generally described and a good system with 10 points, which have to do with dealing with stakeholders and analyzing the situation, setting up your objectives and actions. But in the handbook, what we look for is also really very practical tools as a kind of toolkit, how to implement these different steps in planning your tourism. Like, for instance, your how do you plan your stakeholder engagement, and how do you keep stakeholders inside and outside the protected areas on one page, or how to get them on one page. And that's the biggest challenge, I think, of the whole thing. And thereafter, all the other things will come, I think, on human resources, on promotion, on tourism products, or on monitoring, and so on. That's a question to Anna. So how practical are the tools and methods in the handbook?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Actually, as I said, the manual was built on the experience of 8 pilot protected areas in a CEETO project, and they all actually, some of them were preparing for the getting the European Charter for Sustainable Development, and actually they followed the basic steps of how to manage the tourism and how to set up the sustainable tourism in their area. So they followed the participatory planning methods. They also engage stakeholders in all of the processes and manage them throughout the whole process until the end. So basically all of these information are explained in a manual, and I have to say that in the manual there is one chart with the explanation of all, short explanation of all CEETO pilot case studies, where you can see how they solve some of their problems and also how they manage these processes. Since, as I said, manual is like 40 pages, we cannot go and covers a lot of topics. We cannot go into the detail, but I invite you also to check on the CEETO network platform, where under the CEETO documents, where there is by each of the 8 CEETO pilot actions, numerous documents on management process and also monitoring processes in their areas. But anyhow, as I said, also there will be an editable clickable links in the manual, so you can easily in this digital version jump, let's say, to these specific documents.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Right.
Servi and Anna. Andrea, Stefan, would you like to contribute to this question or raise a
Yeah,
new
thank you. Anna, thank you for your explanation. Just to add that some of the pilots already had established stakeholder forums, most of them within European Charter. It's also good to know that for them, this was, let's say, another round of very similar process. So the best experience that they could offer is also at the platform side, but some of the links in the manual are leading to the best examples from the project. They had a different challenge. So the forums and stakeholders were gathered. There is fluctuation of the stakeholders. There is a change of management staff, and all these things are highly demanding, but it's possible. And the good thing is that we really offered tools that were tested and proved to work. And if it doesn't work, we probably said it doesn't really good idea to repeat this. Thanks.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Sari, for your question. A week ago, we had a very interesting webinar that was in Spanish, unfortunately, and that was precisely the point. How can we keep stakeholders engaged? I can send you the link, but I'm not sure if you understand Spanish. Otherwise, it would have been very useful for you as well. Okay, and we have Andrea Troncoso. Maybe wants to connect camera and microphone.
I think the camera is
there.
Connected.
Yeah. But maybe it's better if you disconnect the camera because we hear you very badly. Okay, now it's better.
Now is it working?
Yes.
Maybe my connection is not so good.
Okay.
I have two questions. So for the first one, thank you very much for the presentation and for the work you've done during these last 3 years. First question is, have you done any links beyond Europe work? And I'm especially interested in Latin America. If you created some bonds or some links, connections, in any case, I will share your work with the Chilean colleagues and Argentinian ones. So that's the first question. And the second question is, if you are considering during the coming years to have the manual as an open document, so the users along Europe and beyond Europe could then collaborate and get an updated document in the coming years, for example. So it's a kind of co-created living document.
So Andrea, Anna, would any of you take this question?
This is a very good idea. We can try to do it. It's a challenge for us, but I would be inclined to accept this challenge, to have a living document, to put it on a platform and allow to provide mostly good examples. Very good idea. Thank you.
Okay, and we are 2 minutes to go. There are many questions regarding COVID-19 and how parks and visitor centers can reopen. I think there is still not a very comprehensive body of work done in this direction. Martha Mills, she wrote on the chat box earlier on. I think she's conducting some research on this. Maybe Martha, you want to elaborate, or maybe tell us if you know already some measures that are being taken in protected areas?
No. Hi everyone. So I'm a student mentor for the Responsible Tourism Management course in Leeds in the UK, and also I've done some work on protected areas in Georgia in the Caucasus, and I'm just collecting information about the responses to COVID from various protected areas, and focusing on Europe first, but also if anyone got good information from other protected areas, that would be interesting to know. But it's mainly to collect information about impacts of COVID on protected areas, of both positive and negative, and also and then looking at the roads to recovery. So you know, and I think at the moment it's very crucial to see what others are doing to learn lessons, because nobody really knows what to do. And I mean, maybe not at the moment, but at the beginning, when I started this about 4 weeks ago, and I spoke to a few protected areas across Europe and also in the Caucasus, and everyone just says the same thing: we just don't know what to do. We're still waiting. So, and of course, it's also very early to make some credible predictions. So at the moment we're all speculating, but I think if we've got that common knowledge and start sharing lessons, then it will be very useful for everyone to see. And even like when I'm talking to my protected area contacts in Georgia, you know, they're all saying, well, we just don't know what to do. We're waiting for the government to do something. The government is not really focusing on this at the moment. So and everyone wants to learn lessons from others. So so if anyone can share information, that would be very useful. I can put my email again on there, but it will be available publicly, so it's not only for me. It will be shared.
Right. Thank you, Marta. Okay, thank you very much. So yeah, this question has been raised in many other webinars, and also Europark members have been sending us this request. So let's do this. For all of you who are interested in following this topic, I mean, this is all new. I know that the European Commission closed, I think 1 week ago, a public consultancy on what is the impact of COVID for tourism businesses. So Marta, maybe you want to take a look at that. I think the results haven't still been published, but there will be some results on the impacts. But we need also to look at solutions. Of course, solutions will depend on each country legislation, but maybe we can make a small compromise, and Europark can be the hub to gather that information. So all of those who are interested in following the topic, or you have already implemented something that could be relevant for others to implement, just drop us an email either to europark@europark.org or to my personal email, and we will be collating this guidance and sharing with the wider audience. In fact, with Europark Spain, we are preparing another webinar also dedicated to the Spanish speakers, but maybe we can capitalize that information in English as well. And they are precisely looking at local solutions in Spain to empower protected area managers and prepare them for this new reality that we need to adapt to. And without taking any longer, also because we have reached the limit of our time, I thank you everyone for your participation. My colleague Fernando will just right now paste here a link where you can just tell us either you are satisfied or not with this event. This is very important for the project statistics, so if you can just take 30 seconds of your time to answer, we will be very glad. And then very soon you'll receive the recording of this webinar, but also the presentations and all sort of links that I have been collecting from our discussion today. So once more, thank you very much for your participation. A big thank you to CEETO project and to all the presenters here today. And well, let's do this more often. This is really needed. We need to share information and capitalize. And we look forward to receive the manual and the guidelines. So thank you once more, and have a good day. Goodbye.
Thank you all.
Everyone, thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.